So, hi everybody. This is episode 5 of the Branded Accountant. And again, it's myself, Philippa Haynes from Insight 101, and my colleague, Richard. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, Richard Brewing, Joint Managing Director of Progress Barmore Brewing. So we provide mentoring and coaching support for small firms of accountants.
Thanks, Richard. And I support accountants with their branding and helping them to bring together and unite their teams as well. So anyway, today it's episode 5, and we're talking about communicating to your firm externally. So we've looked at why is branding important. That was in our first video. Second, what are the elements that make up your brand, and do an audit of your brand at the moment. What does your client see currently, and is that enough? We then talked about the leader of the business, of the firm. They typically lead the vision of the business and then communicate it out to the team, but not necessarily. We talked about that, didn't we, Richard? Whether it's the team who gets involved at the front end, or whether it's the leader who communicates that down. And then we talked in our last meeting about the internal culture of the business and how this can be worked on, because essentially it's all about the staff who are the brand ambassadors and who will be talking to your clients and doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So it's really important that they're invested in that. And so we've come up to the present day where we'll be talking about externally communicating what your brand and what your firm stands for. And that's the culmination of everything that we've talked about so far. It's about, your thoughts on your business, your observations, how you work with teams, creating the culture, and essentially communicating that out. So joining the dots of all of that work that's been done and pushing it out in whatever way is suitable for you. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Stay tuned for the end of the session. We'll be showing you an example of a marketing plan to help you to start building up your calendar of activities based on the work that we've been doing. But I'll stop the share now, and hi there. Away is the PowerPoint. Let's have a chat about where we are now then, Richard. So we've done all of this thinking about the firm, we've thought about our brand, we've involved our team, our staff, and we've thought about our vision. What next? What are you thinking about before you start to plan your marketing and communicating out to the wider audience?
I think one of the misconceptions around brand for any business owner, but obviously specifically for accountants, it's certainly a misconception that I had when we first started our own accounting firm back in 1993, excuse me, is that brand is just about marketing. And when we're talking about communicating the brand, I think it's important to realize that we're not just talking about communicating a marketing strategy that develops the brand. Brand is in my simple layman's terms as an accountant, brand is how the outside world sees your firm. And therefore it's not just how we market that brand, but it's how we reflect everything about our business. So when we're talking about communication today, it's not just about communicating a marketing message. It's about how we communicate with the outside world, with our clients, with the marketplace, with our network, and making sure that that communication is consistent and is presenting accurately the right brand. We want our brand to accurately reflect our firm, reflect our values, reflect our beliefs, reflect our behaviors, reflect what we're trying to do, all the things that we've talked about in the recent videos. And so from a communication point of view, this isn't just about the website, it's not just about our marketing message, it's about our wider communication, our our tone of voice on our emails, how we are seen, how our messages are received by others.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, I think, you know, the word marketing has certain connotations. And it's certainly, for some, it's about spending lots of money and, you know, thinking about social media or your website or whatever you said, Richard. But you're right, it's about everything that you do as a firm. You know, it's about your emails, it's about how you onboard somebody, it's about what you put out there on LinkedIn, for example. It's about, you know, whether you start to pull together webinars and what that tone of voice is. It's all of your activities. So I'm totally aligned with that. So I think it's quite easy to get overwhelmed. And, you know, when I'm speaking to my clients, you know, whilst we've said it's not just marketing in that sense, you know, that's what people start to grasp, and they feel a little bit about what, you know, there's so much to do. Where do we start? And I know that you obviously talk to a lot of your clients who sometimes, you know, are on a great track and other times do feel overwhelmed. So what would you say to them at this point?
I think this is an opportunity to simplify it as much as anything else, because sometimes when you talk to marketing agencies and all the rest of it, and you get into these conversations around brand, then there'll be conversations about creating a brand manual and what sort of font everyone should be using and what terminology everyone should be using and what colors you should be using and all the rest of it. If we, you know, one thing we've focused on throughout this series is the link between brand and culture. And culture is massively important in any accounting firm. It is in any business, but certainly in any accounting firm. Having that firm that reflects you as a person and reflects your beliefs. And if we approach our communication along the same lines, it makes life a lot simpler. You know, one of the we've all faced that challenge where we've come to, you know, we've sat down to write a letter or write an email, and we don't know how to start. And you know, we're not quite sure how to, what terminology to use, how to get into the subject and all the rest of it. When we're talking to someone, because we're much more ourselves, we don't have that same pause at the start. We don't, you know, meet somebody in the street and then go, okay, what's my opening line going to be? We just get into a conversation. And I think the more that we can embrace that with our communication, the easier it gets. And so that's about having a belief in your culture, and having a belief that it's consistent and that it's consistent with the message you're trying to get across. So that's where I'm coming from on this. I think it's a great opportunity to simplify a lot of what we do, and having that confidence to express things in our own tone.
Yeah,
Be
I
ourselves.
agree. Yeah, and a current client I'm working with has been quite surprised in how much we've been talking about the team. And I'll be hosting a workshop tomorrow for that same purpose, because it's about getting everybody aligned and everybody together, and it's about using their voice. And I've had quite a few conversations recently with clients where I've said, actually, we need to understand about the business itself and about the staff and how they're feeling, and also get their perspective on the business and on the brand, because actually you can gain an awful lot of insight from that, and equally you can use their language. So one of the key things for me, brand should not be something that is glossy that people don't really recognize. You know, we've all heard about, you know, you look at an advert, you go on the website, you're amazed and inspired, and you get on the phone and then it's something completely different that you hear on the other end. That is where brand and marketing and just being yourself completely breaks down, because actually it's all about, what is it about this team, what is it about this culture which unites us and which really, you know, is the starting point for everything we do. And it's that piece that I think clients really need to kind of get to grips with, actually, and use their team as a sort of a force for good, and getting them involved will help that.
Yes, we've talked a lot about having the right team and the right clients. Talking to accountants, there's lots of conversations about we've got the wrong clients, but how do we get the right clients? And hopefully in this series, we've been able to demonstrate how crucial brand is in helping achieve both of those things. But once you've got the right team in particular, then communication becomes so much easier. If you ask 10 team members to write an email on a particular subject, you will get 10 different emails. And potentially every one of those 10 emails is correct. But equally, each one of them could be different to how you as the managing partner or whatever would have written it. So having a team who understand the culture of the firm, understand what it is you're trying to do, understand how you want to be communicating with your clients, means that you've got much more chance of those 10 emails being correct, albeit slightly different to the one that you would have done. But your culture is such that that's okay, because our team embrace the way that we want to talk to our clients. And I think that's, we have a lot in our profession about templated replies and all the rest of it. For many of us, it's far better to have a team who have the confidence and the freedom to communicate in a style that we are equally confident is going to reflect what we're trying to achieve as a business. And that's where I think this simplicity comes from. And also, one of our challenges in accounting firms is having the ability to delegate, particularly where we've got younger members of the staff. Delegation gets so much easier, again, once there's this understanding of brand and culture. So we will keep on coming back to this topic. I know it's something I often come back to in conversations with clients. This consistency of message internally and externally is so important and makes life so much easier when you get it right. But the first place has to be that everybody understands what you're trying to achieve as a business and the style in which you want to do it.
Yeah, totally. And I hear so many times that members of the team say that they feel very confident now when they are approached, when they pick up the phone. And it's not just with current clients, also it's about inquiries. I think more and more people are being challenged. Why should I choose you as a firm? What is it that you offer? And that can sometimes be quite daunting for anybody, really. But equally for a junior member of staff, or maybe even, the accounting world, where actually up until relatively recently, there hasn't been that challenge maybe. And actually, if you know what the firm is about and you know what you represent and you're confident in the message that you're pushing out there, then it makes a completely different conversation that they have. There's a different outcome there.
Yes, it does. I mean, I think that I'm sure a number of accountants watching this will appreciate what I'm saying. It wasn't unusual for us to have a client say to us, "You don't seem like accountants. You don't seem like normal accountants," was often a phrase. And I had mixed views. I've still got mixed views on whether that's good or bad, because it's a bit of a reflection on the profession. But that wasn't something we set out to achieve. We didn't set out to have a tagline that said "not like normal accountants." But clearly the way that we were communicating with our clients, the way that we were behaving with our clients, the tone of voice that we had, the way that we presented ourselves, came across as in a style that they were finding different to what their experience of previous accountants had been. And clearly that was good for us from a commercial point of view. But it's a good example because that's something that the team buy into. They start to understand that that's how you're doing it. And it only comes through having a consistent approach. And that was because we just believed and still believe that it was our business, and therefore we would do things our way. And if people liked that, that was great, and most did. And if they didn't like that, that was equally fine. It just meant that we weren't the right accountants for them, and they weren't the right sort of client for us, which is, again, let's find that out early on. So again, it's another good example of why communication is so important, and why having that consistency and belief in your communication is so important.
Yeah, and I know we've had a conversation outside of this chat today where we've talked about, there is an accountant for everybody. really the point of branding and talking about culture is to make it easy for that client or that prospect to make the right decision, both for them and for you as the business owner, because what you don't want is that disconnect. You don't want to be kind of fighting all the way, banging heads, kind of feeling that they don't understand you, or maybe that your personality jars a little bit with them. The whole point around this is for them to be able to make the right choice for both of you. And that becomes pretty clear, I think. So if you're looking for, an accountant with a certain style, and what you want is to see that certain style quite quickly, so that you can pretty much put a mirror up and go, they're like me, I like this, for whatever reason. That's a deeply personal choice. But actually, when you were talking about, having these plans for, how we're going to come across, what's our way of doing things, I think there's obviously some parameters, some structure that you can put in place. The starting point, as we've said, is the culture itself. But I think it would probably be remiss of us not to kind of give a few pointers about, what people can do, what firms can do, business owners, to ensure that they're beginning to prescribe what's right for them. So what would typically you have thought about as a business owner when thinking about the way we do things?
I think we need to first of all understand why it is that we're doing this. So why are we thinking about communication? Why are we looking to communicate, to talk to someone, bizarrely? But I think we need to understand in the first place, because it's very easy to become mechanical in this world and say, okay, well, I've not talked to anyone today, therefore I'm going to talk to someone. I've not sent out an email, I'm going to send an email out. We ought to send we should send a newsletter out, we should send something out to our clients. Well, why are we doing that? And that's the first point for me. And then the second one, obviously, is who we're sending it to. And only then do we get onto the what. I think we need to make sure that, again, for efficiency as much as anything else, time is a very precious thing for accountants, and we don't want to be doing things that we don't need to be doing, and we don't want to be doing things that take time unnecessarily. So understanding, why are we having this conversation about communicating? Why are we thinking about communicating? Who are we trying to communicate to? And then, okay, what are we trying to communicate? But because that will help us to, style drops off the back of that. We don't start with style. We have to start with purpose. There has to be a reason why we do something. And then we make sure that the way that we do it is consistent with everything else that we do. But we have to have that purpose in the first place.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so as a business ourselves, what we pull together for our client is something called a brand blueprint, which isn't all about marketing. As you said, the logos, the fonts, etc. That can be an endpoint, one of several, but it's not the main one. And this brand blueprint is all about what, who, why, and how. So it's kind of saying, understanding what is the essence of the firm, and then saying, what do we want to achieve? How are we going to do that? What are we going to do next? And that is possibly the most important part of the conversation when you're thinking about brand. It's why, why are we doing this, and who do we want to talk to, and how are we best going to serve them?
Yeah, I had a terrific conversation yesterday with a client accounting firm of ours and their CRM provider, and it was a perfect example, really, of what we're talking about, because that whole conversation was about keeping in touch. How as a firm do we best keep in touch with our clients? And it was a conversation that revolved around the different sorts of clients in the firm, the frequency of contact that would be suitable for those different groups, the different aims that the accountants had for within those groups, both in terms of keeping in touch and also for sales opportunities, looking to push the right services to the right clients. It was a conversation that moved on to who was going to do that, what we wanted to template, what we wanted to personalize. Really good example of how we can use systemization and people and use it in a way that is refined so that it is effective for the different sorts of clients in the firm. So it's not something that just happens. It's not something where we just say to the team on a Monday morning, look, we need to be talking to clients more, so everybody phone a client once a week. There has to be a purpose behind it. There has to be a goal that people have to understand what the messaging is, what we're trying to do, and then do it in a very personal style that is, this particular firm have done a lot of work on culture over in recent years. And so the team are very comfortable. They know this style of the firm. They know how to talk to clients, the sorts of, where to pitch it. And so, in half an hour, we went from a very systemized conversation to what actually for clients will come across as a very, very personal service. But it's done in a very structured way. Everyone knows why they're doing it. They know what the purpose is. They know what the messages are. And it's a good example of the sort of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I have, you mentioned a newsletter there, and I've had a constant conversation with a client of mine who wants to pull a newsletter together, but actually the work that we've done has not been completed yet. And so we just need to sit down and say, for this first communication out with the change of brand and the refresh and the redirection, what's it all about, and create that email or that newsletter that actually means something. And a lot of it happens a lot where people get a little bit panicky, as you said, right, we've all got to start communicating on Monday morning because we haven't done anything like that for ages. And actually what needs to happen is something that's considered, that is put together in a structured way. And it's not just something that fell off the back of the cart a few months ago. And so you now, decide to get back on the horse, which is actually in my client's case, something that had happened. That newsletter that was quite an anchor point had fallen way down the to-do list and had actually fallen off it. And now, of course, it's about setting up that rhythm again, and deciding, what that newsletter is going to be about, what it's going to achieve, and then, of course, what the content is. So it just needs to be thought through a little bit. And as you say, made personal as well. We don't want templates particularly.
No, I think that as accountants, we talk an awful lot about being proactive. We recognise that it defines us compared to the many firms who are reactive. We recognise that it's something that clients want. Well, if we're going to be genuinely proactive as a firm, that means us bringing up the conversation before the client does. In my mind, that's what proactivity is. It's getting there first, raising the issue with the client before the client raises it with you. Many firms almost define proactivity as responding quickly to the client's query. Well, that's not proactive because the clients come to you with that query. So this is about getting in front and the way thinking about how we are going to achieve that, because that could be very time consuming, could be very challenging, could require an awful lot of resources to be that much on top of your game. But thinking about how you utilize the communication resources that are available to you is a big step forward to being a truly proactive firm. I remember a few years ago now, in the days when we all used to send out hard copy newsletters, we would send them a quarterly newsletter to our clients. It was a bought-in newsletter. We could personalize it to a bit, but it was a bought-in newsletter, as many were at that time. And nobody read it. I think the percentage that read it was tiny. So in the end, we thought, okay, well, we're spending a lot of money here. We'll stop sending it. The moment we stopped sending it, people phoned up and said, "Where's the newsletter?" But you never read it. But it was just nice to have something from you. And we thought, okay, right, well, we're missing a trick here then, aren't we? Because we're wasting money on a newsletter, clearly, but at the same time, people want us to be communicating with them. So let's find a smarter way of doing it. And we replaced it with phone calls and a more structured approach to making sure that we stayed in touch with our clients. So it was a good lesson. And of course, with the digital world that we now live in, there are no excuses. It is so easy to stay in touch. And it is so easy to effectively and efficiently stay in touch. You just need to be conscious of that and have a strategy for it and a process for it, in the same way that we have a strategy for preparing our accounts and sending out our accounts.
Yeah, totally agree. And the most important bit here, and we've said it again, is what makes sense for us to do. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's a newsletter, whatever. Does it make sense for us to do that as a brand? You know, is that the best way of doing it? Or based on our personality, the way that we do things, is it about sending a link to a video that we've recorded? You know, just a 30-second, hi, how are you doing? This is what's going on. It doesn't always have to be, you know, just the same old tools that you pull out and just kind of dust down and start again. It's actually about thinking outside of the box, really, and kind of going, now that we've done this thinking around the business and the culture, what makes a lot of sense to us? And I just wondered whether I could share the screen a minute, Richard, and just show visually what that kind of looks like, because I think a lot of the time when you talk about it, it's quite easy to kind of listen and go, but what does that look like? Some of us are quite visual. So I thought I would just share this, which is a document which I find very powerful for prospects of my business. But obviously this is just as a visualization. So this is a one-page document which shows you the 5 key stages of pulling your brand together, but most importantly, saying, what does that mean? So we've talked a lot about, you know, what is the structure of our brand? What is the business all about? And this is essentially the blueprint, which talks about the vision, the values, who your client target is, what is it that you specifically offer? What flavor of an accounting service is it? Through to the culture, who your competitor is, etc., etc. So that is the key point. And you don't have to write it down like this. You know, I have a client who is absolutely, he uses a spreadsheet for everything. So it's actually whatever works for you, just put those thoughts down, because that is the structure of what your brand is about. Now, if you're working to rebrand, then there could obviously be that design element, which we talked about. And here is an example of how that blueprint changes into the look and feel. But we're talking more about the culture and about what you do with once you've decided what you're about. How do you pull that together? And this is called your marketing plan. But essentially, it's about pulling together all of those channels of communication. So it could be your newsletter, it could be a phone call, it could be your onboarding process. What I would definitely recommend is pulling out a spreadsheet and saying, what is it that we want to do? What makes sense from our perspective? What's our tone of voice? But equally, what do we want our client to get from this? What is the purpose? So don't go out and send something like a newsletter if you're not really, really clear about why you're doing this. What do you want your client to do next? Do you want them to read it through and to call you? Do you just want to be there as a kind of, we're here, you know, we haven't gone away. If you need us, that's where we are. Write it down on a Excel spreadsheet, whatever it is, go month by month if you want, and start to begin to build a plan of action, but make sure you understand who you're targeting and how you should be doing it. So that is obviously no detail at all, but at least it gives you a visual kind of indication of the sorts of things you can do. And that doesn't mean that it has to be overly structured, but it does mean that there's a document there that you can start to talk around with the team as well. Because, you know, what does good look like? What are we expecting here? How does that work? What's the purpose? All of those things are quite important, I think, for people to understand.
Yes, what I love about that is the way it brings it all together. I've been an accountant for 40 years now, and when I see vision, values, culture, personality, that's when I get excited, because that's what it's all about. So much of the work that we do with firms is around those areas, because look, people are entitled to assume that you're a good accountant. If you're not a good accountant, if you don't have the technical skills, the professional skills, you shouldn't be running an accounting firm anyway. So let's just take it as read that people assume you're a good accountant. What makes the difference to your business and to your clients and to your marketplaces are those words: vision, values, culture, personality, and making sure that you are being true to those, and that your business is being true to those, is what will make the difference. That's what success looks like. Most of your clients don't need you to be an amazing accountant. They need you to be a good accountant, and they need you to be technically strong, and your team to be sound, and all the rest of it. But they don't need you to be the best accountant in the world. What they do need is you to be the person and the firm that they want you to be. And that's, the one lesson surely that we've all learned with 2020 and all the challenges of that and what have you, is that the way that we communicate with our clients and the way that we demonstrate our support for our clients is what sets us aside from everybody else. We are seeing huge amounts of movement and migration in SME businesses now, changing accountants. And it's the same thing every time. My accountant wasn't there for me in 2020. My accountant didn't tell me what was going on. They didn't tell me what I needed to know. I didn't feel as if they were there to support me. So that's got nothing to do with the technical ability of an accountant. That's got to do with that personality coming through in how they communicated with their clients. And it's making a real difference in pound notes now to those accounting firms as they go forward. So I think more than ever, anything else, 2020 has confirmed what we've argued for a long time, that it's about how you behave and how you communicate that makes the real difference for your clients, not your technical ability beyond a basic professional level.
Totally. And I think with that in mind, we should finish up here. But one of the messages that you gave a few minutes ago was to be proactive. And I think that's what we're trying to sort of achieve today, and also in the series of the Branded Accountant. And that's all about, planning. So we've now talked about what's your brand stand for, your vision, your values, the culture, all of that good stuff. Start to plan out, what does that mean for our firm then? What do we need to do? What do we want to do, actually, rather than need to? What do we want to do as a business? And what does that look like? What are the tools, if you like? So on that note, here are our details at the end of this, which is what we always put up. We're always happy to kind of talk in more detail about what we've discussed in this particular video today. Richard, you're there, and myself as well. Feel free to contact us anytime with questions. Over to you, Richard, for the final words.
Well, just that, yes. And any questions, comments, thoughts, contact details are on there. I love talking with other accountants. I'm odd in that way, but I do. So yeah, I'd welcome any sort of feedback or questions that come off the back of these.
Great stuff. Well, that's it for now. Thank you very much, Richard, for your time again. It's been a pleasure to catch up and exchange ideas. And thanks everybody else for watching, and see you soon.
Yes. Bye, everyone.